and this is GoodDoctors.Health. I am the founder. I am very excited to talk to you and meet with you all today. We are getting into probably one of my absolute favorite topics, which is postpartum recovery. Now, I think one of the biggest reasons why is because it is just something that is so obvious, but completely undiscussed in most of our traditional healthcare circles. So I am really excited to get into that today, and I hope all of you mothers, whether your babies are still babies or you have full grown adults, I really hope that you get a lot out of our message today and really understand a lot of what's been going on with you. So, first and foremost, let's just recap from where we were last week. We got into infertility and how just the basic, again, common sense it is that you're going to struggle with conceiving if you don't have enough resources to sustain a healthy pregnancy. And furthermore, you're going to find that, I mean, the pregnancies are going to be much more difficult. It's just an equation of fuel. And I wish that particular conversation was happening more and more in the world of infertility, because a lot of individuals are doing these different interventions. And while there's merit to all of these interventions, if you are still underfueled, that doesn't solve the root cause of the problem, and it's just going to continue to get worse, especially if we kind of induce a pregnancy. So that's one of the big things that we talked about last week. So anyone who's dealing with infertility or miscarriages and whatnot, please go back to last week's discussion. But this week we are going to be talking to about two moms about postpartum, and this particular topic is going to be especially geared towards all of you women who may have had multiple pregnancies, like back to back, just kind of one after the next, even two, but just two pregnancies within a very narrow period of time. Those women who have had really traumatic pregnancies and deliveries, and very, very, very sick, got very, very sick, lots and lots of issues during the pregnancy. Maybe the delivery was unexpectedly difficult, all of those different factors. And then the third group that we're going to be talking to in this particular video is those of you who maybe everything went smooth and maybe you never had any of the problems, but you immediately had to just get your entire life right back and get back to work, and not necessarily giving yourself the time for recovery. So if you're in any of those groups or just have never felt like you fully recovered, this is what we're talking about. We're talking to you today. So in order to really, I first want to tell you that this is very near and dear to my heart because of my own experience in this in this world of understanding about postpartum recovery. So when I was getting out of school and we are starting our practice, and I graduated, got married, and was already in practice. I mean, it was like within a very, very narrow chunk of time. It was just a whirlwind of change and different stressors and all of that. And let me just say this: whenever you're going through school and you're doing all of that, and you're working these long hours and studying till you know with the wee hours of the morning and all that, your high level of nutrition is not necessarily a focal point. Let me just say that. And it wasn't for me. So I was doing the typical college, grad school diet of just kind of surviving, not having a ton of resources. And then of course we get married, and even and all of the different things, and then we were pregnant on our first anniversary. It was just right there. And then we were pregnant with our second and had our second 14 months later. So it was just this whole whirlwind. I thought I did great with it. I really did. I thought I was doing phenomenal, no issues. From I immediately had to get back to work. No rest for the weary. was not sleeping, of course, because between one or the other, when they're 14 months apart, somebody's not sleeping that night. And um, and then of course, what are you doing right after you've had, two pregnancies? Well, you're trying to get your body back to where it was. So it was doing a lot of dieting, calorie restriction, and to say that I was doing that the right way is not exactly the way I would define that. And but you know what? The kids were doing good. They were coming along. My career was really, really taking off. Having so much success there. And I remember thinking, you know what? I I feel like I feel like I just have it all. And then it felt like everything came crashing down on me. I got back from a work trip. Um, and it was typical, nothing unusual. But when I got home that time, I slept 18 straight hours. And when I woke up, I still felt like I was still exhausted. And I just figured, you catch a flu or a cold or caught a virus, something somewhere, along the road. But I never fully recovered. And then I just was so tired all the time. And a few weeks later, I'm still just exhausted. And I mean, and this kept going on and on and on. And here we were months and months later. And now I, it takes everything in me to just get through my day. I mean, and this is my early 30s. And I've got like full career. I've got two young kids. I got my husband, got the house. I got a lot of things to take care of here. And I mean, it was everything just to be able to get out of bed around, 7 a.m., get myself together, kind of get them together, get them off to school. And I had to be back in bed by 3 p.m. And that was it. And that was and just to recover and just to be able to do the next day. And on the weekends, I would spend my entire weekend just in bed. I had the it felt it was such extreme chronic fatigue. And you think like after resting all weekend, you're like, okay, you'd be good to go on Monday. No, pretty much what ended up right back where I was. And so I'm a physician. I have all these physician friends. I've access to all the tools, all the testing, everything. And so I just started talking to a lot of my colleagues and different people. I'm like, okay, and they say like, they looked at me because, you look fine. I looked fine. And they're like, oh, you just have a really stressful job. You just need more rest. You just need more rest. You got a lot going on. You do too much. I heard that all the time. You do too much. And I'm like, yeah, but no, this is something different. This is something very, very, very different. And again, testing, everything came back fine. Everything's normal and whatnot, but this wasn't normal. And and after like going through this whole thing, it was so discouraging. And I was looking up online and doing my research there, which is so scary, right? Anybody who's ever gone online and tried to figure out what's wrong with them, you know what I'm talking about. It's it's a very dangerous place to be. And basically I'm finding out that like there's no treatment. There's like no treatment for chronic fatigue or chronic fatigue syndrome or whatever that was. And again, everything's just saying more rest. I'm like, there's no way I cannot rest anymore. Things have to get done here. So in this, I remember this one day, there was one day that was just a huge turning point for me. And it's like 3:30 in the afternoon, and my kids are home, they're in the living room or whatever, and I can hear my husband come home from work. And I can hear all this going on, and I hear my husband say, "Where's your mom?" And my son responded back with, "Oh, she's in bed again." And it just broke my heart. I'm like, this cannot be my life. I mean, we've gotten to the point where my 6-year-old just assumes like that I spend my life in bed. So anyway, in my pursuit of like, okay, I've got to figure something out. what I happened to fall on, or what I happened to be researching, I was looking into these people who are able to do like these endurance races, these like ultra marathons and all that. Because I'm like, you know what, I want to know what those people do, because if they can run 100 miles, maybe if what they if that's what works and they can run 100 miles, maybe it can get me to 7 p.m. That was my theory. So I was looking it up and I was actually really, really surprised whenever the more research I did into it, I found out that it's really not so much how they train, because that's what I was thinking, like maybe more physical training, maybe I need to figure out how to exercise, I don't know, something. And I found out that a lot of what they do actually has more to do with their diet than it does like how they physically train to do these incredible athletic feats. And so and and it's a lot of vegetables and, obviously, tons of hydration and all of this. So I was like, okay, you know what? I'm giving it a whirl because I have nothing to lose at this point. You got to eat something. So I might as well eat what these people eat. And I'm not going to say that the recovery was instantaneous. It was, just like after a couple of days, you're like, okay, maybe I feel a little bit better. And then after a couple of weeks, you're like, wait a second, I think something's happening. But quicker than I realized, I was able to go from not being able to get out of bed all weekend long to starting to do running and being able to make it further and further distances. And eventually, with it was pretty much, well, just a little over 3 to 4 months, I was actually able to run an endurance marathon just by changing the way I was eating. And that changed the trajectory of my life and my career. Um, up to that point, I was already very focused on natural. It's a lot. You have to understand, a lot of functional medicine is a lot going into supplementations and different ways to use those kind of things. And while food is important, it's actually not as much of a focal point as you would think in a lot of functional medicine circles, and including mine. And what I was really astounded by is how we're missing this foundation, the fundamentals of what it means to be healthy. And so then, just kind of working backwards, I started to see what how I got there. And unfortunately, it's a road so many of us have been down. So what we see with so many women is, they're coming into their childbearing years, or coming into these they're coming into pregnancies not being well fueled. And then essentially, and that's what was happening in my case, I did not come into those first pregnancies full of nutrients and full of resources. I was already kind of running on E. And then when you throw that second baby right in there behind, I mean, I was just on completely on fumes. And then immediately going into all these other stressors, I was rocking that tightrope until one day the tightrope broke, and that's where I landed in this just extreme exhaustion, and unable to do what I knew fundamentally that my body was capable, my system was capable of doing. And the more and more I started doing this, I started seeing this was happening to so many women. I mean, let's first of all, like, again, most women before they get pregnant, they're taught, if they do anything, they're, here, take some prenatals, which I'm going to tell you, in general, a lot of these prenatals don't absorb that great anyway. So you absorb a fraction of what's in there, and they don't do a ton of, whole food fueling. Try to say that 3 times fast. Whole food fueling. Then they go through pregnancies, and a lot of times women during pregnancy have to just kind of do what they have to do. Some women are get really, really sick. They just have to, manage with what they can keep down and do their best. But then, as soon as baby's born, you why is that not part of the conversation of how to refuel post pregnancy? And especially, then, during nursing and breastfeeding, because there's still that pull on your resources. Is it any wonder we have all these mothers out there who feel completely exhausted, total brain fog? They feel frazzled at every end. And we're going to talk about this next week, but we're really going to get into, and then you're doing you're walking this tightrope of just being on E, and then you hit menopause and it feels like everything crashes down. So what we're talking about today is that kind of that middle stage of yes, we were, we got through the fertility hurdles and all of that, or maybe not. Some of it was not as much of a hurdle as others, but we get through that phase. But then, what do we need to be doing so that we gracefully go into those years, and not have all of these hormonal issues when we get into that perimenopause and menopausal stages of life. So here's what to do. Here's what to do. First and foremost, it's great to be like, for those of you who are very intentional, you're working on, like, okay, I'm ready to have a family, get well fueled. I would encourage you to go ahead and use the blood work to know what your body's asking for. Just simply taking a prenatal, you may absorb it, you may not. Some are better than others. Just in finding the right fueling, and then during and after, getting the support that you need. um Let me just say this, like, again, there's so many variables during pregnancies. Again, you may have to just kind of do what you have to do and adapt the best way, but especially post pregnancy, when you can eat food and it stays down, really working on refueling. So many women get really caught up in trying to lose the baby weight, and or just taking care of baby, period. They're not even thinking about themselves. But you have to take care of yourself first, and getting those good fuels, good foods into your system. Again, mostly whole foods. I get into the very specifics with individuals based on their individual biochemistry. But as a general, quality proteins, good clean meats, lots and lots of fruits and veggies. Now, that's the essence of what most women need to have been doing. But let's just be straight. That's not what happens. That's so many of us, like myself, that's not our story. That's not what happened. So now what do we do? And here it is. If you're already experiencing, the anxiety, the fatigue, hair thinning, um, brittle nails, just overall just aches, pains, brain fog, probably some digestive issues. Um, that your skin just doesn't look the way it's supposed to look. You're seeing all the signs that you are not absorbing, that you're having that malnutrition. You start right away with the fundamental basics: whole foods, good quality body movement and exercise, and lots of hydration. Most people need half their body weight in ounces in hydration. Start now, get refueled. And for the most part, I mean, while all of that is fantastic, and in of itself will probably get you some progress, I can't encourage you enough. Find somebody who is get a full, comprehensive blood work, not just the CPC Chem panel that is part of your annual physical. That's way too basic, and it doesn't give you the information you're looking for. You really need to know, where are you absorbing your B vitamins? Has there been any kind of toxic exposure that you need to be addressing? How are the kidneys doing? Is everything going through? How are you doing with your blood glucose? Are your hormones balancing back out? Where's your cortisol? Are your stress hormones holding the way that they're supposed to be holding? Your thyroid, did it rebound well, or does that need to get addressed? I see a lot of that, especially right postpartum, where the thyroid is just taking a real hit, along with the digestive system. All of these things you want to get them checked, so you know how to refuel. And again, whenever we're doing that, using the quality supplementation that it just works, not just what it says on the bottle, but the things tried, true. And once you have all that data, now you can make informed decisions, and you're not just taking all of these different supplements and having no idea if what you're doing is working or not. So, what I would encourage any of you, just Do a little bit of your own research. Find out where you can get these numbers, get this data, get your own bio data. You can visit our website to find out more about how we do it. And really, just for just another week, we actually do have for because I'm this kind of work you can't get done in a 5 to 10 minute office visit. It's just impossible to get this kind of data. So it really takes an expanded consultation with all of the comprehensive blood work to get the information you're looking for. So just for the next, basically, less than 10 days, we do have this code. If you go to our website and whenever you're checking out the exploratory panel, if you put the word family, 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 in, there's a $95 off discount code. That will also automatically trigger an expanded consultation where we really can go through all of your health goals and your objectives and make sure you have the plan that you need for recovery. So please, if there's anyone out there who needs that, or somebody who they are not recovering, they're they're trying to be the amazing mom that they really are, but they just don't have the steam in the engine. Please shoot this over to them. Let them know that there is hope, that there are answers, and I would love to set up. We have free consultations for anybody who just wants to talk about what's going on and find out more. So thank you all so much for tuning in. I hope you have an amazing rest of your day.